Another conversation between Jesus and two of his closest friends, two of the 12, from Mark's Gospel, chapter 10. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it that you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with a baptism that I'm baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the other 10, heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." So ends the reading of God's holy word.
Thanks be to God.
Invite us to pray. Eternal and gracious God, we are the disciples. We are the disciples today. We are that circle that surrounds Jesus, that asks the questions, some of them intelligent, some of them a little dumb. And so we, like James and John, need your illumination. We need your patience as we learn, again, each day, how to serve. This we ask in your holy name. Amen. This whole passage starts out pretty crazy. And the only way I can really make sense of this conversation is to assume that James and John were fresh out of the Dale Carnegie Assertiveness Training Program. How else do you explain a cockamamie request to Jesus that he do whatever we ask of you? Either that, or these boys were playing a serious game of double dare, and James and John lost. And they had to put the ridiculous question to the Son of God. Anyway, ridiculous or not, God wastes nothing. Even a harebrained question is not without some value. So Jesus redeems this teachable moment. And he schools the disciples in servanthood. The last several weeks, at least off and on, we've been hearing a lot about serving. About the first shall be last, the last shall be first. So if it seems a little bit like a deja vu for you, you're not crazy. It's been a recurring theme. And maybe it's been repeated so often to us because it was repeated so often to them, because it's just a difficult message to get. So certain messages, maybe because they are difficult, bear repeating. In my case as a kid, the message that bore repeating was something like, clean your room, take out the trash and do your homework, or pick one of the three. My parents probably would have loved to have said any one of those once and had it stick. And think, really, how short the New Testament might be if they'd gotten the message the first time. It might be 10, 15 pages long. But as it was, they, like many of us, needed repetition, especially about this whole idea of serving. Today we live in an era when serving may be both easier and tougher than in Jesus' day. Easier because many who serve, at least those who serve professionally, have certain guarantees very often, like a minimum wage, maybe some health insurance, basic labor laws that prevent the worst of abuses of those who serve. On the other hand, serving others nowadays may be tougher because we live in a culture of self-serve. And it's amazing how thoroughly we have become self-servers. In Aldi's, you can scan your own groceries. I think, used to be able to. In some McDonald's, I've mentioned this before, you can order your meal on a touch screen. And there are always the roadside stands where you can help yourself. Put your money in with the honor system. Even our car washes often have no human being anywhere nearby. Just take your credit card. When I visited someone a few weeks back up at Highland Hospital, the automatic parking ticket machine was on the fritz. So you just drove in and parked. And when it came time to leave, we pulled up to the booth where there was now an attendant there. And you had to tell the attendant how long you'd been there. I wanted to say 5 minutes. But the poor attendant then had to calculate the fee based on the time that you gave her. I think ours was actually 73 minutes, something like that. I just gave her enough to cover an hour and a half, said thank you, drove out of the hospital, and said a prayer of gratitude to God that I didn't have her job. Serving can be tough. Jesus knew it. He asks James and John, are you able to drink the cup I drink? It can be a bitter one. Sometimes even unto death. Very recently, Oscar Romero, Bishop Oscar Romero, was canonized. He'll be St. Oscar Romero. But he probably wasn't thinking of sainthood on the morning when he stood up to serve Mass and was gunned down because of his support for the poor. Father Romero was a servant of the gospel, a servant of the least of these, and a servant who drank a very bitter cup. He once wrote this: a church that doesn't provoke any crises, a gospel that doesn't unsettle, a word of God that doesn't get under anyone's skin, a word of God that doesn't touch the real sin of society in which it's being proclaimed. What gospel is that? Jesus knew that serving wasn't easy. Sometimes it can take our life. Sometimes it just tries our patience. Years ago, when I worked at McDonald's, second reference to McDonald's in one sermon, there was a slogan that got under my skin more than once. It was, and you've heard it, the customer's always right. So the message to us, the employees, was make them happy. So if somebody brought back a cheeseburger complaining that the pickle wasn't quite right, we had to give them a new cheeseburger, no pickle. Serving may deplete our patience, but serving Christ does not mean robbing our dignity. It's not about self-abasement. In fact, I've been in bars more than once where the servers were probably the only ones with any dignity. And God bless them for their patience and forbearance. Sometimes serving demands a strong dose of integrity and maturity. And a sense of vision, a grasp of the big picture as to why we're serving and by whom we do it. James and John were grasping for the valedictorian seat. Jesus countered with, this isn't about class rank. It's not about you. It's about God. Theologian Marcus Borg suggests that Jesus' words about the cup and the baptism are images of death, a death that brings life. In his words, Borg's words, a dying of the self as the center of its own concern, and a dying to the world as the center of security and identity. Now, theologians can get pretty wordy, but in essence, it's all about serving with God at the center of what we do. It's not so complicated. It was happening all the time last night. For example, I don't think even once I saw one of our servers pick a piece of turkey off a plate before they set it down for supper. I know I would have remembered that. Never once did Paula come into this sanctuary to see another few folks, only to tell them, you can come in to eat as soon as I go have another slice of pumpkin pie. And I'm sure I never saw anyone over at the dishwasher doing some sort of end zone victory dance when they did the 99th plate, although maybe they did, and I wouldn't blame them. But it was basically pretty humble service going on the whole time. Our 150, 175 pounds of potatoes, whatever it is, didn't arrive with a note in the bag that said, buy your potatoes at Rathbun Farms, Eel Pod Road. No, they just quietly left them next to the barn in the dark, just like they had the last 10 years. Free. Every incident of serving connected with our dinner was done with grace and kindness and generosity. That spirit of hospitality and humility flows around these walls. As we take to heart the message, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. It is the way of Christ. However, I would not recommend the first shall be last and the last shall be first when it comes to seating. Yeah. That would not have gone well. Probably have a riot. Servanthood doesn't do well imposed upon someone. It needs to be a choice for kindness, selflessness, a choice for life. I think Don will appreciate this one. I know you know this story. A man named Damon Knight wrote a short science fiction story in 1950 about aliens that came to Earth, ostensibly to help us out. And they brought with them a book entitled How to Serve Man, which really freaked the humans out when they learned it was a cookbook. It's not the sort of serving Jesus has in mind. But there is no question that servanthood does come with a cost. Lamar Williamson, a writer, theologian, describes the journey with Christ as sometimes requiring, quote, a costly pouring out of one's life for another, whether it be to an aging parent, a difficult spouse, a special child, or a friend who has unusual needs. End of quote. And yet embedded in all of that is joy. The good Dr. Albert Schweitzer put the joy of servanthood this way. He wrote, I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know. The only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. Now that the dinner is over, may each of us continue to find a way to serve, maybe after a nap. Because in so doing, we bring forth the face of Christ upon earth.